Hello friends. What happens when fire meets earth, when impulsive Aries energy collides with analytical Virgo calm? And what if we add another layer, when the ancient wisdom of the Chinese zodiac throws in the intense, mysterious snake and the hard-working, loyal horse? Are we talking about a cosmic dream team, or a ticking time bomb? Today, we're diving deep into the complex and often misunderstood pairing of the Aries snake and the Virgo horse. Get ready to explore a relationship full of contradictions, magnetic pull, intense passion, and potential heartbreak, but also incredible transformation if the stars and hearts align just right. Let's take a journey through their love life, their challenges, their dreams, and everything in between. Love, the spark versus the plan. From the very first glance, there's undeniable intrigue between Aries snake and Virgo horse. Aries snake is bold, seductive, and gives off that magnetic, "I don't need you but maybe you need me" energy. Virgo horse, meanwhile, is charming in a quieter, more refined way, organized, practical, and always analyzing everything beneath the surface. Let's take this spark and magnify it tenfold to understand what truly happens beneath the surface when fire meets earth, Mars meets Mercury, and the snake locks eyes with the horse. In the early days of their connection, the Aries snake brings an energy that is impossible to ignore. There's a silent confidence in how they move, speak, and observe the world. They flirt with presence more than words. They command attention without asking for it. The Virgo horse, more modest by nature, is immediately curious. They're not easily swayed by charm or good looks, they need substance. But something about the snake doesn't just intrigue them, it haunts them. It's the kind of allure that gnaws at the back of their mind late at night. What is it about this person? They wonder. The Aries snake, in turn, is captivated by the Virgo horse's composure. While others fawn over the snake, the Virgo horse keeps a cool distance. This isn't coldness, it's caution. The horse doesn't gallop at first sight, it watches, calculates, weighs. This reserved nature awakens the snake's competitive side. The chase has begun, and the snake loves nothing more than a worthy hunt. There's an electric tension here, a natural push-pull dynamic. The snake's passion smolders beneath their cool exterior, while the horse's warmth is wrapped in layers of logic and skepticism. One leads with instinct, the other with strategy. But somehow, they meet in the middle, at first. Early love between them is exhilarating. Dates are filled with playful debates, long gazes across candle-lit dinners, and conversations that stretch deep into the night. There's a sense that they've discovered something rare in each other, someone who challenges them. For the Aries snake, who's used to winning hearts with ease, the Virgo horse's mind becomes the real prize. For the Virgo horse, who guards their heart like a fortress, the snake's emotional depth becomes a mystery worth unlocking. But even the most dazzling chemistry eventually collides with real-life rhythms. As the honeymoon fades, subtle tensions start to show. The Aries snake begins to crave more intimacy, emotional, physical, spiritual. They want to dive deep, skip the small talk, and explore the shadowy corners of love. They want loyalty, obsession, intensity. But the Virgo horse isn't wired that way. They love deeply, yes, but on their terms, through acts of service, trust, and shared growth over time. They need space to process, think, and breathe. To the Aries snake, this might feel like distance, coldness, rejection. Why won't they let me in? The snake wonders. And to the Virgo horse, the snake's intensity can start to feel like pressure. Intrusion, emotional hijacking. Why can't they just relax? The horse thinks. This is where the gap forms. Not because they don't love each other, but because they love differently. The Aries snake lives in the world of fire, fast, passionate, and transformative. They want to devour love. The Virgo horse, an earth sign with a horse's independence, builds love like a garden, carefully, slowly, deliberately. One falls like a wildfire. The other walks in slowly, checking for solid ground. And yet, this very difference holds the key to their growth. If the Aries snake can learn to slow down, to allow space, to embrace silence and structure, they start to discover the quiet magic of consistency. They see love not as an all-or-nothing plunge, but as a steady dance. If the Virgo horse can learn to open up emotionally, to trust the unknown, to let go of needing to understand everything, they begin to feel the beauty of surrender. Together, they have the potential to transform love into something profound. The snake teaches the horse how to feel more. The horse teaches the snake how to build more. But the dangers remain real. The snake's possessiveness can become controlling if unchecked. They may begin to manipulate through silence or seduction when they feel their love is slipping. The Virgo horse, in defense, may retreat deeper into logic, masking emotional discomfort with overanalysis or aloofness. Arguments might not be loud but will be heavy. The snake throws emotional daggers, the horse counters with cold rationality. They may stop hearing each other altogether, trapped in their own emotional languages. The best-case scenario? Mutual transformation. Aries Snake grows from their need for control and finds peace in letting someone be. Virgo Horse expands beyond their need for structure and learns the beauty of emotional vulnerability. They become better because of each other, not in spite of their differences, but because of them. Worst case? They both become versions of themselves that neither recognize. The snake, once bold and passionate, becomes clingy or resentful. The horse, once patient and wise, becomes sharp-tongued and emotionally unavailable. The very traits they once admired in each other become the ones they resent. But with communication, humility, and effort, this love story can thrive. Not because it's easy, but because it demands growth. This is a relationship built not on instant compatibility, but on deliberate alchemy. Two souls, shaped by entirely different elements, learning to dance in each other's rhythm. Not a fairy tale, but maybe something more powerful. Something real. Marriage, stability or strain. Marriage between these two can either be a masterclass in compromise or an endless game of who's more misunderstood. But to fully understand the emotional landscape of an Aries Snake and Virgo Horse marriage, we must stretch beyond the surface and unpack the deeply rooted forces at play. What draws them in, what tears them apart, and what makes this union so uniquely challenging and, potentially, rewarding. The Aries Snake enters marriage with a fierce sense of purpose. They don't wander into commitments, they dive in with conviction. They approach marriage like a campaign, with strategy, passion, and an unspoken desire to dominate the narrative. To them, marriage isn't just a bond, it's a battlefield where love must prove itself daily, not through routine but through emotional stakes. Loyalty, to the Aries Snake, is sacred, but it's often demonstrated in complex, unconventional ways, through silent support, through fierce protection, and through an all-consuming emotional presence that can overwhelm more delicate sensibilities. The Virgo Horse, on the other hand, walks into marriage like a careful architect. They value structure over spectacle. They seek harmony, not adrenaline. For them, love must be practical to be sustainable. They believe in shared chores, planned calendars, healthy communication, and the sanctity of personal space. The Virgo Horse isn't rushing to the altar, but once they commit with their entire being, just not in the emotional language the snake understands. Love, to the horse, is built one thoughtful act at a time, often without grand declarations. The tension arises almost immediately after the honeymoon phase. The Aries Snake wants passion that stays lit, but the Virgo Horse begins to establish systems, bedtime routines, budget spreadsheets, detailed lists for everything. The snake sees this as emotionally sterile. The horse sees the snake's intensity as chaos. Aries Snake asks, "Why don't you feel this with me?" Virgo Horse responds, "Why don't you see what I'm already doing?" Communication between them can feel like tuning into different radio frequencies. Aries Snake speaks in emotional metaphors, subtext, intensity, implication. Virgo Horse speaks in literal terms, preferring precision, context, and linear explanation. The result? Misfires, misunderstandings, resentments that grow not from betrayal but from the chronic feeling of being unheard or misunderstood. Power dynamics are another hidden pressure point. Aries Snake, driven by Mars and influenced by the cunning and control of the snake archetype, often assumes the lead in decisions. They like to move quickly, seize opportunities, and make bold life choices with or without consensus. The Virgo horse, ruled by Mercury and grounded by the practical horse, resents being left out of decisions, especially ones that affect the couple's shared world. They want time to analyze and process, and they value being consulted. Without collaboration, they quietly build emotional walls. This creates a cycle. Snake pushes forward. Horse pulls back. Snake demands more intensity. Horse demands more calm. The more one accelerates, the more the other resists. And slowly, if unchecked, this friction can turn a passionate union into an emotional gridlock. But there is an equally powerful possibility here. When they recognize that they are two halves of an intricate whole, something extraordinary can happen. The snake's ambition paired with the horse's methodical nature can create a dynamic where dreams are not only envisioned but brought into reality. The Aries snake dares to want more life, more love, more adventure. The Virgo horse knows how to organize, to stabilize, to make sense of that wild ambition and turn it into an actual life plan. Together, they could build a life that's not just emotionally rich but practically successful, an empire of both heart and home. Aries snake brings energy, Virgo horse brings order. Aries snake makes bold moves, Virgo horse follows through with precision. When they truly partner, not just coexist, their differences become their greatest advantage. But they must work at it, intentionally and consistently. The Aries snake must learn the art of patience. They must respect that Virgo horse's quiet love is no less passionate, just less performative. They must learn to slow their reactions and speak plainly, even if it feels vulnerable. The Virgo horse, meanwhile, must learn to engage with emotion, not just logic. They must not dismiss intensity as irrational but see it as a form of love. They must be willing to surrender some control and trust the snake's intuitive sense of direction. Crucially, both must accept that love doesn't always feel natural. Sometimes it feels like work, like conflict, like standing face to face with your opposite and choosing them anyway. That's the alchemy of this marriage. In the discomfort, transformation is possible. Let's not sugarcoat the darker possibilities. If the snake becomes too controlling, using emotional leverage or withdrawing affection as punishment, the horse will retreat into icy detachment. If the horse becomes too critical or emotionally stingy, the snake will begin to seek validation elsewhere, through work, through fantasy, or, in worst cases, through someone else. Without self-awareness, this marriage could devolve into parallel lives lived under one roof, two smart, capable people living entirely separate emotional realities, connected only by routines and formalities. But with mutual respect, shared values, and the humility to grow, this marriage becomes a powerful union of head and heart, strategy and soul. They have what many couples lack: the potential to not only love but elevate each other. Because when the Aries snake learns to appreciate the Virgo horse's structure, they find peace. And when the Virgo horse learns to embrace the Aries snake's chaos, they find passion. And when both stop trying to be understood first, and start trying to understand, that's when the magic begins. Sex. Hot, complex, addictive. This is where things get spicy, but it's not just about heat. It's about layers, power, trust, emotional undercurrents. For Aries snake and Virgo horse, sex is never just sex. It becomes a battlefield of emotions, a sanctuary of unspoken truths, and sometimes, a mirror showing exactly where the relationship stands. Aries snake brings a magnetic presence into the bedroom. It's not the loud kind of sexuality, it's smoldering, unspoken, and deeply felt. Their movements are intentional, their gaze penetrating, their energy thick with sensuality. Sex for them is not only physical, it's a form of communication, an exchange of power, and often, a test of emotional depth. They need to feel in control, not in a domineering way necessarily, but in an orchestrated, almost theatrical way. They want to craft an experience. And most importantly, they want to matter in that moment. Their desire isn't just to be touched, it's to be craved. Virgo horse, in contrast, doesn't usually gallop into intimacy right away. They're guarded, thoughtful, and analytical. For them, sex is about trust, and that trust takes time to build. But once it's there, once the emotional green light is on, the Virgo horse transforms. Their stamina surprises. Their willingness to experiment expands. Their attention to detail means every touch is mapped with care, every sound and sigh is heard and remembered. Virgo brings in the soul, while the horse brings in the physicality. Together, it's not just satisfying, it's consuming. The challenge lies in timing and emotional safety. Aries Snake wants to skip the line, to plunge into connection immediately, to set the tone and pace. They want to feel that spark and stoke it into an inferno. But Virgo Horse resists being rushed. If they feel pushed, judged, or cornered, they will shut down emotionally and physically. And that's where the disconnect begins. If they don't sync emotionally outside the bedroom, the tension shows up between the sheets. The Aries Snake might start to feel unappreciated. They may crave more validation, more responsiveness, more willingness from their partner to match their fire. The Virgo Horse, on the other hand, might feel overwhelmed or even objectified, reduced to performance rather than connection. The emotional imbalance can kill desire faster than silence ever could. But when trust exists, when the Virgo Horse feels safe and the Aries Snake feels desired, this sexual relationship transcends the physical. It becomes a private language, a place where words aren't needed because bodies already understand. The snake appreciates the depth, the subtlety, the way the horse can read needs without them being spoken. The horse is drawn in by the snake's power, the way they hold space, the way they lead without force. They don't just have sex, they create an experience. It could be deeply romantic or intensely primal, sometimes both in the same night. There's also a rhythm that develops. The snake brings heat and intensity. The horse brings patience and endurance. The snake initiates. The horse elevates. The snake brings the fire. The horse sustains the burn. They challenge each other. The snake pushes boundaries. The horse stretches comfort zones. One teaches surrender. The other teaches desire. But the shadow side of this connection is just as real. When resentments build, unspoken frustrations, unmet needs, emotional tension, their sex life begins to reflect the disconnect. Physical touch becomes a formality or a transaction. The snake may grow resentful, withdrawing intimacy as a form of control or punishment. The horse may retreat into duty, offering physical connection without heart behind it. What was once sacred becomes strategic. The magic vanishes. Sex, for this couple, is a living barometer. It reveals everything. How well they're communicating, how safe they feel with one another, how much emotional space exists between them. The bedroom becomes less about passion and more about politics if trust isn't nurtured daily. But here's the beauty. They can always rebuild it. If they talk, if they stay vulnerable, if they meet each other not as opposites but as co-creators. When it's good, it's electric. When it's great, it's transcendent. The snake finds grounding in the horse's patience. The horse finds liberation in the snake's passion. Together, when aligned, they don't just make love. They make memory. They make meaning. They make each other feel. And that's the most addictive thing of all. Friendship, opposites, or allies. In friendship, this pair is unpredictable, but often enduring. At first glance, the Aries Snake and Virgo Horse don't appear to have much in common. One leads with boldness, the other with caution. One dives in headfirst, the other calculates depth before touching the water. But that's precisely what makes their dynamic so intriguing. Friendship between them isn't effortless, but it is earned, and because of that, it often becomes one of the most loyal and surprisingly resilient connections in either of their lives. The Aries Snake is magnetic by nature. In any room, they carry an air of self-assurance that makes people turn their heads. It's not loud or showy, it's the quiet kind of confidence that makes others lean in. They're natural influencers, not just because of what they say but how they say it, with certainty, with intensity, with presence. When they enter a room, it feels like something important just happened. The Virgo Horse, by contrast, stands slightly outside the spotlight. They're thinkers, observers, the ones who assess the social temperature before making a move. Trust, for them, is a slow-burning process. They've likely been burned before, emotionally or energetically, and they've built internal systems to guard themselves against anything shallow, unreliable, or chaotic. They're not antisocial, they're selective. And while others may be dazzled by the snake's charisma, the Virgo horse watches quietly, scanning for substance. That's what makes their first encounter so layered. The snake notices the horse's quiet intellect and emotional restraint, and sees a puzzle worth solving. The horse, in turn, senses that behind the snake's allure is a deeper emotional complexity. They don't trust it immediately, but they notice it. That's the seed. Over time, a friendship may form through shared projects, mutual social circles, or even common adversaries. They might connect over a mutual disdain for pretense, or a joint fascination with philosophy, power, or purpose. The snake respects intelligence and loyalty above all else. The horse values consistency, truth, and emotional maturity. If they recognize these traits in each other, they slowly begin to open up. The Aries snake brings a sense of excitement into the Virgo horse's life, something unpredictable, something bold. They might nudge the horse out of their comfort zone, challenging them to take risks, chase dreams, or confront fears. The snake shows the horse that sometimes, life isn't meant to be understood first, it's meant to be lived. Meanwhile, the Virgo horse offers the snake a kind of emotional grounding. They don't react to drama, they analyze it. They don't chase chaos, they neutralize it. When the snake gets caught up in power struggles or emotional spirals, the horse brings them back to center, often without saying much. It's in their presence, their ability to listen deeply, speak calmly, and offer clarity, that the snake begins to feel safe. That said, their friendship isn't without friction. Arguments can happen, sometimes frequently, because both are deeply opinionated. The Aries snake doesn't back down from confrontation, they thrive in it. They love to debate, to push buttons, to test boundaries. The Virgo horse, though more reserved, will never allow themselves to be intellectually steamrolled. If the snake gets too arrogant, the horse will push back, with facts, with logic, and with surgical precision. Most of their clashes won't be emotional outbursts, they'll be mental duels. Disagreements about politics, morality, timing, relationships, or goals. At times, they may even walk away from each other, needing space to process. But here's what keeps pulling them back: mutual respect. Even when they're frustrated, they recognize each other's intelligence and loyalty. Even when they disagree, they see each other's value. They're not the kind of friends who talk every day or share every little detail. But they're the ones who show up when it matters. When the snake is going through a dark time, the horse won't offer empty platitudes, they'll offer practical solutions and calm presence. When the horse feels stuck in routine or doubt, the snake will remind them of their fire, their strength, their ability to choose a new path. As travel partners, not ideal. The snake might want luxury, spontaneity, last-minute changes. The horse needs planning, structure, and mental prep. They may drive each other mad on a vacation itinerary, but even then, they'll secretly admire the other's style. As business partners, though, they're gold. The Aries snake dreams big and moves fast. The Virgo horse organizes, refines, and ensures sustainability. The snake initiates. The horse implements. Together, they can turn ideas into legacies. They can write, build, lead, or invent. It's a classic case of vision plus execution. As confidants, their friendship often deepens with age. The more they grow into themselves, the more they appreciate each other's differences. The snake softens, the horse opens. They may not always agree, but they will always show up. So, are they opposites? Yes, dramatically. But are they allies? Absolutely. Because some of the strongest friendships are not born from sameness, they're forged in fire, shaped by friction, and held together by the quiet knowledge that someone sees you, not because you're like them, but because you're not. Business compatibility. Risk versus precision. Here's where things get really interesting, not just because of their differences, but because of how those differences can either spark brilliance or breed disaster. When it comes to business compatibility, the pairing of an Aries snake and a Virgo horse is nothing short of fascinating. It's the classic story of instinct versus intellect, speed versus structure, vision versus detail. And if they can figure out how to stop clashing and start collaborating, they have the potential to build something extraordinary. Aries Snake steps into the business world like a storm, confident, daring, unrelenting. This is someone who doesn't just dream, they do, immediately, often without asking for consensus. They trust their gut more than any spreadsheet and are rarely afraid to take massive leaps of faith. They see opportunities others miss and seize them before anyone else even notices. Their charm is magnetic. They can talk their way into, or out of, nearly any room. In business, they are the bold initiators, the risk-takers, the ones who challenge the status quo simply because they can. Failure doesn't scare them, stagnation does. Virgo Horse, by contrast, approaches business like a chessboard. Every move is calculated, every risk weighed, every possible outcome mapped. They are meticulous, strategic, and incredibly disciplined. This is someone who knows that great businesses aren't built on passion alone. They're built on systems, structure, and sustainable growth. The Virgo Horse thrives in routines, frameworks, and data-backed decisions. They don't trust gut feelings unless they're supported by logic. While they may not charge ahead with fiery instinct, they will work tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure no stone is left unturned. So what happens when you put them together? Initially, they might annoy the hell out of each other. The Aries Snake may see the Virgo Horse as slow-moving, too conservative, maybe even fearful. The horse, in return, may view the snake as reckless, impulsive, and dangerously overconfident. But scratch the surface, and a strange kind of mutual respect begins to form. The snake admires the horse's depth, consistency, and ability to foresee issues before they arise. The horse, though initially skeptical, starts to recognize the snake's brilliance in navigating unknown waters and making bold, game-changing calls. In a startup environment, for example, the Aries Snake might generate the big idea, pitch it with flair, and secure investors. Meanwhile, the Virgo Horse would quietly be the one turning that idea into a sustainable model, setting up systems, hiring the right people, and managing the day-to-day details that the snake has little patience for. It's not an equal division of labor, it's a symbiotic one. But for this to work long-term, they must understand and respect each other's operating systems. The Aries Snake needs to recognize that not every decision has to be instant, and that pausing to evaluate risks isn't a sign of fear, it's a form of wisdom. If the snake steamrolls the horse's careful planning with impulsive decisions, the horse will feel disrespected and begin to emotionally and mentally check out of the partnership. Once that happens, it's hard to reel them back in. On the flip side, the Virgo Horse must learn to let go of some of the control. Business is unpredictable by nature, and not every decision can be backed by a 30-page report. If the horse overanalyzes every detail, they'll paralyze momentum, and the snake will either push ahead alone or abandon the partnership entirely in frustration. To the snake, inaction is worse than a bad move. The horse needs to trust that sometimes progress means embracing uncertainty. This balance, between risk and precision, is the heart of their business compatibility. When it's healthy, it's unbeatable. The snake keeps the vision alive, pushing boundaries, finding new markets, daring to evolve. The horse keeps everything grounded, ensuring legal compliance, budget discipline, and long-term scalability. One thrives on expansion, the other on refinement. They're not likely to agree on everything, and they shouldn't. Their disagreements, if handled with maturity, become productive tension. The snake says, "Let's do this now." The horse says, "Let's make sure it's the right move." Somewhere in between those two positions lies a smart, powerful decision neither could have made alone. But when the dynamic turns toxic, everything unravels fast. If the snake becomes domineering, dismissing the horse's input, taking all the credit, or making last-minute decisions that blow up months of planning, the horse will slowly but surely pull away. They won't yell, they won't create drama, they'll simply stop giving their best. And that's the beginning of the end. If the horse becomes overly critical, constantly second-guessing the snake, micromanaging every move, or refusing to move forward without ironclad certainty, the snake will start looking for an escape route. They'll resent the stagnation, feel creatively stifled, and eventually rebel. That's why boundaries, trust, and clear communication are essential. If they set roles early, you handle growth, I handle operations, and stick to them with mutual respect, they'll avoid most of the common traps. They also need a shared vision. If they disagree on the destination, all the planning in the world won't help them get there together. In short, this business partnership is either brilliant or brutal, rarely anything in between. But if they invest in understanding each other's rhythms, and if both are willing to compromise just enough, the result can be nothing short of legendary. The snake gets to dream big and move fast, knowing someone's keeping the foundation solid. The horse gets to build something real and lasting, knowing someone's lighting the fire and pushing the edge. Together, they're not just a team, they're a force, a visionary and a strategist, a storm and a structure, a risk and a plan. And when that balance holds, they don't just build businesses, they build empires. Dark sides, when things fall apart. Every relationship has shadows, and this one, it's got a few layers. Deep, emotional, strategic layers, because when an Aries Snake and Virgo Horse fall apart, they don't just drift away. They disassemble each other, piece by piece. The unraveling isn't loud at first, it's slow, cold, and calculated. But once it starts, the spiral is hard to stop. The Aries Snake's dark side is a potent mix of emotional detachment, jealousy, and psychological manipulation. Beneath their charm and boldness lies a deeply sensitive ego. If the snake feels rejected, unappreciated, or emotionally invisible, they don't immediately confront it. Instead, they brood, they internalize. Then, like a strategist preparing for war, they begin to plot, not necessarily in a malicious way, but as a defense mechanism. They may withdraw affection, offer only silence, or use passive tactics to reassert control in the relationship. Their goal isn't always to hurt, but to win, even in love. And when pain becomes a competition, no one walks away whole. The Virgo Horse, on the other hand, has their own brand of shadow. Their dark side hides behind logic, order, and emotional restraint. When hurt, the Virgo Horse rarely yells or explodes. They analyze, they categorize, they take the pain and turn it into a silent report on what's wrong with the other person. And rather than express that pain directly, they become critical, first of the snake's choices, then their character, then their worth. Every action is dissected, every flaw is magnified. What starts as an internal process of protection becomes an external cycle of subtle punishments and emotional coldness. Put these two patterns together, and you've got a toxic loop with no exit unless one of them hits the brakes. Here's how it plays out. The Virgo Horse makes an offhand critical remark, maybe about the snake's impulsiveness, their intensity, or lack of responsibility. To the snake, it feels like a rejection not just of behavior, but of being. The snake, wounded, doesn't say anything. Instead, they retreat emotionally, cutting off warmth, affection, and vulnerability. They become cool, distant, maybe even sarcastically indifferent. The horse, already unsure about the snake's emotional consistency, interprets the distance as instability or immaturity. So they pull back harder, become more judgmental, and the walls go up even higher. Snake feels attacked, right-pointing arrow. Snake detaches or retaliates quietly. Horse feels unsafe or disrespected, right-pointing arrow. Horse withdraws and criticizes. Repeat, again and again. What makes this loop so damaging is how invisible it is to the outside world. From afar, they may look like they're functioning fine, no screaming matches, no dramatic fallouts. But underneath, there's a cold war happening. A silent erosion of trust, respect, and emotional safety. It's the kind of dynamic where both parties go to bed feeling alone, even when sleeping side by side. In many cases, this dynamic builds over time. At first, the differences are manageable, even intriguing. But as emotional needs go unmet, and as misunderstandings stack up without repair, each partner becomes a slightly hardened version of themselves. The snake becomes more controlling, more suspicious, more emotionally unavailable. They might begin to test the horse with little emotional games, delayed replies, unexplained absences, icy silences, subtle flirting with others. It's not always about infidelity, it's about power. The snake needs to feel needed, and if they can't feel it directly, they'll try to manufacture it. The horse, meanwhile, becomes increasingly rigid, more rule-bound, more judgmental. They build an internal checklist of grievances and begin treating the relationship like a task that isn't being completed properly. Affection becomes conditional, emotional intimacy is rationed. The horse tells themselves they're just being reasonable, but deep down, they're in self-protection mode. They stop trusting, and when trust is gone, love can't breathe. This is where it can get dangerous. If neither takes responsibility for their part, if each believes the other is entirely to blame, they fall into emotional trench warfare. Weeks, months, even years can pass in this emotional freeze, with each partner convinced they've done everything right, while silently blaming the other for all the damage. In some cases, the snake may start seeking emotional or sexual fulfillment outside the relationship, not always through betrayal, but through fantasy, distraction, or control in other areas of life. The horse, feeling the shift but unable to name it, becomes more withdrawn. Communication dies. Sex fades. Laughter disappears. It becomes a functional relationship with no pulse. And yet, they might stay together. Out of pride, out of shared history, out of fear of failure. But what they're left with isn't a relationship, it's a frozen stage play, with two brilliant actors refusing to break character. But it doesn't have to end this way. The very qualities that tear them apart, emotional intensity, analytical precision, passionate stubbornness, are also the same tools that can save them. If the snake becomes vulnerable and admits, "I feel unwanted," the horse might lower their armor. If the horse can say, "I criticize because I'm scared of being let down," the snake might soften. But for this to happen, they have to choose intimacy over ego. The hardest part? Both must learn a foreign language. The snake must learn to be clear, not cryptic. To speak feelings directly, not test them through manipulation. To trust that vulnerability is not weakness. The horse must learn to be emotionally present, not just intellectually correct. To comfort without judgment. To open their heart, even when their mind is terrified of chaos. Without this shift, the relationship calcifies into a beautiful ruin, once full of potential, now buried under layers of pride, silence, and unspoken hurt. But with that shift, they can transform the darkness into depth, the pain into intimacy, the downfall into a breakthrough. Because falling apart isn't always the end. Sometimes, it's where the real relationship begins. Life goals, aligned, or at odds. At first glance, Aries Snake and Virgo Horse may seem to be heading in opposite directions. One is leaping into the fire, the other is measuring the ground beneath their feet. But when you dig deeper into their life goals and internal drives, a more nuanced truth begins to reveal itself. They are chasing the same mountain peak, but through vastly different trails. And whether they get there together or fall apart halfway depends entirely on their willingness to understand, adjust, and evolve. For the Aries Snake, life is not a passive experience, it's a quest. A fiery, unpredictable, deeply personal journey toward greatness. This isn't a sign that waits for opportunity. They make it. Their goals are often wrapped in identity and legacy. Who am I? What impact will I leave? How can I control my future? They crave autonomy, not just in career, but in thought and feeling. Being seen, remembered, and respected isn't just a want, it's a need. For the snake, the fire of Aries fuels bold ambition, while the snake energy adds layers of emotional and psychological complexity. They don't just want to succeed, they want to transcend. The Virgo Horse, on the other hand, carries a very different rhythm. Their approach to life is more measured, more practical, but just as driven. Virgo brings the desire for mastery, perfection, and long-term stability. The horse energy makes them ambitious in a more grounded, people-oriented way. They don't necessarily want the spotlight, but they do want influence, through integrity, consistency, and impact. Their journey is about becoming someone solid, reliable, and respected not for flash, but for depth. They want to build something that lasts, whether it's a family, a legacy, a career, or a well-ordered internal world. Self-discipline is their superpower. Where they align is surprisingly significant. Both are fiercely motivated. Both want to make their lives matter. Both despise mediocrity and crave evolution, of self, purpose, and circumstance. They aren't content just getting by. Aries Snake wants to conquer life. Virgo Horse wants to perfect it. Together, they can become an unstoppable pair of visionaries, one dreaming bold futures, the other organizing them into tangible, structured achievements. They both also care deeply about values like loyalty, progress, and legacy. The snake may want to build a name, the horse may want to build a system, but both are ultimately working toward a life that feels meaningful. This shared desire to matter in the grander scheme of things can be the glue that binds them across decades, even if the day-to-day feels like a tug of war. But where they clash, that's where the fire and friction live. The Aries Snake thrives on speed, risk, and reinvention. They get bored quickly. They need motion to feel alive. In relationships, careers, or personal growth, they constantly seek the next breakthrough, the next upgrade, the next challenge. Standing still feels like dying. So they push, for change, for movement, for passion. If the terrain looks flat, they'll shake it up just to feel something new. The Virgo Horse, by contrast, is risk-averse by nature. Their fear isn't boredom, it's instability. They want things to be predictable, reliable, safe. They don't resist change entirely, but they need time to analyze, plan, and adjust. Sudden pivots or emotional whiplash can throw them into a spiral of doubt and resistance. When the snake says, "Let's change everything," the horse hears, "Let's lose everything we've built." This creates a dangerous loop. The more the snake pushes for acceleration, the more the horse slows down. The more the horse anchors in place, the more the snake wants to break free. If left unchecked, they may begin to see each other not as partners, but as obstacles. The snake might say, "You're holding me back." The horse might respond, "You're ruining everything we worked for." Both will feel justified. Both will feel unseen. But here's the beautiful truth. When they choose to collaborate instead of compete, they unlock something rare. The snake teaches the horse how to let go, how to trust in transformation, how to move with fear instead of freezing because of it. They show the horse that risk isn't always recklessness, it's often necessary for evolution. The horse teaches the snake how to build, how to slow down enough to create something that lasts, how to ground their fire into functional structure, how to sustain momentum rather than burning out in flames of their own ambition. Together, they could build empires. Together, they could create art, launch businesses, raise brilliant children, change communities, or quietly, steadily elevate each other to heights neither could have reached alone. But only if they keep choosing to honor the other's language of ambition. The snake must understand that the horse isn't afraid of success, they're just cautious about chaos. The horse must understand that the snake's hunger for more isn't a rejection of the present, it's a sign of deeper internal alignment seeking expression. And if they both focus on a shared sense of legacy, not just what they build, but what they become, they'll walk side by side, even if the path feels uneven. They'll challenge each other, yes. They'll disagree, they'll frustrate one another, but growth will always be on the table. In the end, their life goals aren't at odds. They're in different languages. The Aries Snake says, "Let's set fire to the sky." The Virgo Horse replies, "Let's build a ladder first." If they listen to each other, really listen, they might just discover that the fire climbs higher with a ladder under it. And that's where their greatness lives, in the tension, in the balance, in the choice to grow not just individually, but together. Final thoughts, can it work? Aries Snake and Virgo Horse are not an obvious match, but sometimes that's exactly what makes it work. The tension, the contrast, the challenge of understanding one another, it all creates the friction necessary for transformation. This isn't the storybook couple who falls in love effortlessly and floats through life on shared preferences and matching love languages. No, this is something else. Something grittier, something more earned. This is the slow-burning, often baffling, but ultimately unforgettable connection between two souls who could not be more different, and might not want it any other way. Let's be honest. Nothing about this pairing screams easy. Aries Snake is a creature of passion and instinct, of fire and silence. They're bold, but layered. They want intensity, meaning, and emotional resonance. They are rarely satisfied with surface-level connections, and they don't do lukewarm. They are visionaries, but also strategists, people who feel deeply but show it selectively. And when they love with a kind of sacred violence, protectively, possessively, with a hunger that can either liberate or suffocate. Virgo Horse is of a different world. Steady, analytical, disciplined. Their strength lies not in the dramatic, but in the dependable. They're not drawn to chaos, they're built to survive it. They analyze before they act. They process before they speak. And when they love, they do so in small, constant actions, checking in, organizing, listening, showing up. They don't make big declarations. They just do, and they expect that to be enough. The clash is obvious. One moves fast, one moves slow. One leads with emotion, the other with logic. One needs to feel, the other needs to understand. They will challenge each other every step of the way. But here's what makes this so beautiful. If they choose each other anyway, despite the dissonance, because of the dissonance, they can build something extraordinary. A love that isn't just about chemistry, but about character, about choice, about two different hearts choosing to speak the same language, even if it takes years to learn. Because make no mistake, this relationship takes time. Time to break down walls. Time to rewire patterns. Time to understand how the other gives and receives love. Aries Snake will need to slow down, soften, speak more clearly, and stop using silence as a weapon. Virgo Horse will need to open up, risk emotional exposure, and stop using criticism as a shield. They will both have to give more than they're used to, and sometimes more than feels fair. This love demands patience, not just with each other, but with the relationship itself. It will move in cycles, intense connection followed by cool distance, misunderstanding followed by breakthrough. There will be moments when it feels like too much work, but those are the moments that matter most. Because every breakthrough in this relationship is earned. Nothing is taken for granted. And that's what makes it rare. This union requires real communication, not cleverness, not analysis, not passive-aggressive remarks or emotional tests. Honest, vulnerable, imperfect communication. The snake must learn to say, "I'm hurt," instead of disappearing. The horse must learn to say, "I need reassurance," instead of withdrawing. They must learn each other's cues, their fears, their pasts. They must decide, again and again, that this person is worth understanding. But if both are committed, if both choose trust over fear, and growth over ego, this connection can turn from volatile to legendary. They will evolve in ways they never expected. The snake will discover the calm of being seen without having to perform. The horse will discover the thrill of being loved without having to earn it. And together, they will write a story full of contradictions and depth and meaning. They will frustrate each other, push each other, force each other to grow. And when the dust settles, they'll find themselves stronger, not just as a couple, but as individuals who have been shaped by a love that didn't just feel powerful, it was. So, can it work? Yes, but not by accident, not because fate says so, not because they got lucky. It works because they decide to make it work, every day, in small ways, in hard moments, in the space between who they were and who they're becoming. The stars don't decide everything, but they do provide a map. The rest? That's up to you. Want more astrological deep dives like this? Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos. And don't forget, sometimes, the best relationships are the ones that don't make sense on paper, but set your soul on fire in real life. See you in the next video.